Hi, I'm Molly.
And I'm Jamie, and this is our From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast. As the owners of Hired Hand website software, we've been developing websites and creating internet marketing strategies for livestock breeders for the past 10 years.
The majority of our customers are involved in the breeding of registered animals, such as Texas Longhorns, Highland cattle, horses, and white-tailed deer, where the pedigrees are very important. The From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast examines many of the differences in raising pedigreed livestock for maximum profit. Join us and learn what we're covering today.
Today I'm online with Crown Creek Cattle, Ryan and Lacy Tewksbury. How are you both today?
Great.
Good.
Good. So today we are going to talk about hunting, race cars, and Longhorns. Is that right?
Yes, a lot of the things we do.
Well, I was reading on your website a little bit preparing for today, and what stood out at me the most, I think my jaw probably hit the ground, is in 2023, you purchased over 100 head of Longhorns. Is that right?
Yeah. I don't know whether that's awesome or crazy, but that is correct.
Well, let's hear a little bit more about that. What prompted you to do that? Who helped you get started? Walk me through your origin story here.
Lacy got us started, so go ahead.
So I grew up, my papa did have cows when I was younger growing up, but I really wanted Longhorns. So I just actually wanted a few. But if you never met my husband, anytime we do anything, it always goes from 0 to I would say 200% anything. So I bought 4, and he always does his research. So it went from 4 to over 100.
Yeah, she got the 4. She told me we bought a brand new piece of property in Paradise, and we were building a house. So I had to hurry up and get a fence for these 4 Longhorns that she went and got. And then when they got here, I thought, oh, they're neat, but I wasn't that really impressed because they weren't of the highest quality compared to the standards. We had no idea what we were talking about. So we got an Eddie Woods classic catalog in the mail, and I just wanted to get a bull. I couldn't understand why there weren't any bulls in the sale, but there was one particular cow, 20 gauge special, that was in the sale that we wanted to look at getting. So we hauled butt down there on the day of the auction, wound up buying 3, and we're just blown away about these animals. And then it was an instant addiction to me to going on like Hubble's website and a bunch of other websites and trying to figure out where to get bulls and absolutely buying almost everything wrong now, but going after it a little bit too crazy. The auctions, I'm a big fan of auctions, the excitement. So we'd go to an auction and come home with 15 animals, and I'd look at her and go, what the heck am I doing? And we just couldn't stop.
Well, we're going to circle back to your 2 comments about bulls here in a couple of minutes, because I feel like that's a whole nother conversation. When I looked at your website and kind of saw your motto about bulls, that differs from a lot of folks. But what was the biggest difference that you saw from the first few that you purchased, Lacy, to when you went in person to that Eddie Wood sale or looked at that sale catalog? What kind of changed in your mind there?
I believe what changed is I didn't really understand the genetics back then, how the breeder that I bought the first 4 from, how he was doing his breeding program, looking at those versus how the breeders today were doing their breeding and how important it was, going back and looking at them and the genetics going back to the original, in the very beginning, genetics of Longhorns, Butler breeding and all of those, and just learning what we're learning today and still learning. We are there's still so much knowledge to gain, but it's just...
She just wanted Longhorns.
I did.
With just registered Longhorns. Didn't have any clue anything other than that, which is by all means not her fault.
No.
How would anybody know unless they just got lucky and went to a sale and saw, the quality that's out there. So like our biggest Longhorn was 55 inches of the 4 we got, and it was 4 years old. So to give you an idea. of what we were first dealing with. And we still have some of them that we're just use as recips now.
That was going to be my next question. Is it seems with a lot of folks that those first few you buy, whether how much your program changes after them, they have kind of a forever home because you're emotionally tied to them, if anything. So if that's the case, you're using them as recips then?
Well, to some degree, we have one we really like. The other ones is just because, and I don't mean this in any disrespect to the animal, but they're so crappy, pardon my French, that I don't know why anybody would ever want to buy it. So, and we have a hard time taking them to the sale barn knowing their fate. So they work as a recip, and we've got all these incredible embryos now. So it just works. Does that make kind of sense?
Oh yeah, completely. So those first few, Lacy, did you have like a hide color that you liked or like a horn set that you liked, or did you truly just go out and just, yep, these four are good, we'll take them home?
I really like temperament. If they came up to me, I did like color. Color was a big deal to me, but it was mainly color and temperament.
And that was probably our fault at the beginning. If a cow would come and take a treat, we'd buy it. Didn't matter what its heritage is, didn't matter anything. And then if we liked the color, like you said, and something about the or the horns, then we'd buy it. And then we met Mark Hubble, and he just shook his head and laughed at us and said, "Man, you've done pretty much every single thing wrong. So let's rebuild this."
So I noticed you do have a couple Hubble bred, or some Hubble breeding in your program. So I assume that Mark's still a good friend and a good resource, kind of helping you direct the path of your program.
Yeah, I probably talk to Mark 35 times a day. He's become quite possibly my best friend. He's an amazingly wonderful guy. We really bonded well. So every time they come for auctions now, they stay with us, and he means the world to us. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
and we like his cows.
So going back to Mark Hubble, the very first interaction with him was Eddie Wood Classic. We bought Melba, and she was one of our very first,
good cows,
great cows that we ever bought. And it was the very first auction. And I had paperwork on her, and I just had a question. And so she was consigned to the auction from him. And so I just called him up just out of the blue because he's in Michigan. And I just said, "Mr. Hubble, I just had some questions. Would you answer them?" He was incredibly nice, answered every single question I had. And he said, "Anytime you have any questions, just please call me." And so I told Ryan about him. They got connected, and ever since then, he's become a great friend.
Yeah, I think we've bought maybe 40 animals from him.
So he kind of has a South herd he can come visit then, right?
Yeah, right. Now, we went up to Michigan. I brought 20 gauge and Roman 7 and Heartbreaker. I drove them up there last August to him so I could see his place. And then I came back with 15 animals, another 15. So, when we're talking to people, other than the genetic side, which obviously is the important part if you're trying to make money, it's what you like to look at. So, like I said earlier, that's kind of a fault of ours because there's not a lot of money in a lot of the things that you just like to look at if they don't have that pedigree that people are looking for. Mm-hmm. But we've picked the things that we enjoy looking at.
Who are some other folks that have helped you in this first year or two?
Justin Sabio, EJS Ranch. So he and his family actually live maybe 2 miles down the road. So they're here at least weekly, or I'm at his place helping each other out. I got back the day before yesterday. I drove with him down to a New Age cattle company to take a bull, and was absolutely blown away by the knowledge and intelligence of Randy Murray. I'm still trying to process all the information that he gave me. So we've met several great people. The Buxtons have been wonderful to deal with, and they're just 1 year further into us than us. So that was kind of neat. They had the exact same start, but 1 year earlier, also at the Eddie Woods. And we've met some other people that have been knowledgeable, but the people that have been the closest and the most willing to help are those that we just listed off.
So previously you mentioned embryos, and then just now you mentioned Justin Sabio. Is it good to assume he's helped you with some of the AI work and some of those sorts of things?
Yeah, so he does all of our AI and embryo implant work for our Longhorns. We also have a fairly big Wagyu operation that we started at the exact same time. And he is now, it kind of came with an embryologist, and he's now getting into that for us as well. So he's a huge part of our entire cattle program.
Well, I feel like that's maybe a leg up you have on some fellow newer breeders, because I feel like that AI piece sometimes takes a while for folks to figure out, right? So if you can start off with a high success rate right from the go, it's a big deal. So tell me a little bit about the embryos that you have in the works right now, if we can know about them. I know some folks are like shush about them. So
we're not to that point yet, obviously. But so again, not knowing really a lot about this stuff, last year I contacted Mark. I'm a big fan of Roman 7, the bull Roman 7. And our best bull is a Roman 7 son. So I figured he probably had a lot of embryos. So I made a deal with him that if he sent down a bunch of embryos, we would put them in our cows, the ones that we talked about, and we would raise them to 6 months. And after 6 months, he would get half and we would get half of the embryo. So we have multiple 20 gauge and Roman 7 embryos from him that some of them were born last week. We have a couple more being born in the next few weeks. I think we implanted 7, and we have, unfortunately, only 3 that looks like, no, 4 that are going to actually throw. And then we've recently flushed our 2 better cows, which is 007 Catch It and Miss Melba, also a Roman 7 and EGS 50. And we have 100 and some of those embryos, way more than I wanted, but it's the way it works. So we're going to start trying to sell those, or see if people would like to buy those embryos, just because it's too many. Mm-hmm. But we're not big into it as a lot of these guys are. We're just lucky enough to have Justin down the road to help make sure that we do well.
For sure. I imagine that's very helpful. How are some of the ones on the ground looking, the ones that you're going to split with Mark?
Well, so far we only have 2.
Okay.
One came out. I mean, it looks exactly like this, which is shocking to all of us.
For those of you that are listening and not watching, he just held up a bright white sheet of paper. So they got their first white calf, it sounds like.
It has the slightest bit of light tan on the tips of its ears, and that's it. So that's going to be interesting. And it's a bull. And then we had another one that's a bull. So for some reason, we like bulls, like you talked about. And it's good because last year we had 26 calves and we only had 3 heifers. So we are a bull producing piece of property over here. I don't know if it's what's in the grass or what, but.
Well, let's just get into the bull addiction then. So a lot of folks, go the opposite way. They're like, I'm going to use semen, or I'm going to, lease a bull and split it. But I think now I'm going to have to go back and look at your site. Is there like almost 20 bulls on your site that are at your place?
We had almost 30, and we sold 6 or 7 of them in the last couple of weeks. A lot of them being calves, but I don't know. So as you can see behind us, hunting is a big part of our lives, always has been. Mm-hmm. And I've been a hunting guide for 25 years. And let's say white-tailed deer, which is the most popular species to hunt, at least in the U.S., people look for 3 things: width, mass, and height. And of those 3, usually everybody has one thing they prefer. Me is mass. I like the thickness of the antler. So we're the opposite of most Longhorn people too. In Longhorns, they call it base. We think base is awesome. And it seems like the bulls have the most base, and it's accepted more than the cows having it. Plus, they just seem to be, for the most part, much more relaxed, other than when they get at each other. and lazier and more my speed in that regard. So we went to the Legacy sale last year, which was the second auction we had ever gone to, and Lightning in the Bottle was there. And he has, these big, massive bases. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need 100 of him. So and Lacy's feels the same way. She likes that docile, big, strong, rugged look that a bull brings.
So tell the listeners a little bit about some of your favorite bulls. Maybe I should limit you to your top 5 that are in your herd.
I know the first one.
Go ahead.
So our first one, our top favorite in our herd is Hubble's Roman Crown. He won Horn Showcase last year. He's not even 3 yet. He's right at 90.
Yeah.
He's right at 90. He's beautiful. He's white and dark and brindle, real chill. He's doesn't move fast. He's just goes at his own pace.
Loads in the trailer all by himself. He's a great just animal.
Open the gate.
And then we have Hubble's Contender, which has massive base, stuff we like. Also about to be 3. He's like 82 inches. He's a Silent Icon son, which Silent Icon is the son of Cowboy Tough Check and Silent Iron. So, 2 massive animals. And we also have Silent Icon, his dad, which I would think he'd be better than he is. He's only 78 inches wide. You have 2 parents over 100 inches. He might have got the short end of the stick, but the genetics are there, obviously. And then we have too many to list calves that are up and coming that have really good pedigrees. The funniest thing is the bull that we actually like the look of the most is named Boogeyman, which Mark hates the name because we really love Grula. And in the winter, he gets about 6.5 inches of curl in between his horns, which is hilarious. But again, he's only maybe 65 inches wide at 3 years old. So he's a 20 gauge son. So he's got the pedigree as well, just didn't get the horn.
So the first few bulls that you mentioned of breeding age, how are you planning for them to impact your program?
Well, we bred Roman, what we call Roman Crown, to 15 girls this winter. And then Contender, we only bred to 5 thinner horned heifers. We're just kind of trying to see where that goes. We're now partnering with Mark and Dale Metz on 20 gauge. So we'll get him next November for 4 or 5 months. And we'll probably breed most everything to him because he throws such, real flashy, colorful offspring. And we're trying to get more into the futurities with that.
So what was the name of the first bull you mentioned that had crown in his name? Royal Crown?
Hubble's Roman Crown.
Roman Crown, that's what it was. So
because his dad is Roman 7.
Okay. My question was going to be, I didn't realize he had Hubble's at the beginning of his name. My question was going to be if he tied to your ranch name at all, the Crown Creek Cattle, and kind of how that came to be. But I assume Mark named him if it has his.
Well, Mark's awesome. When you buy an animal from Mark, if it's within 2 years old or so, he'll let you name it. He just asks to have Hubble's in it, which is totally understandable. So we just try to get Crown somewhere and everything, which makes it for a lot of names. But we've got Crown in almost everything that we've purchased at a young age. And as the new ones come out, we're trying to start it with Crown like most people do.
So how did you come up with your ranch name, the Crown Creek Cattle?
So we own multiple businesses and we always tie Crown into it. And then we have a creek that runs through our property. So I asked, or threw the name out, Crown Creek Cattle. And it just kind of tied well and flowed.
So did you come up with a new brand for the Longhorns, or do you have something that also tied in with your other businesses for that?
Well, she made a Crown brand, or designed one. same as all of our businesses logo, but they couldn't make one on one of those irons. So we just did like 3 C's with like a Longhorn. And then recently we found a Wagyu operation in North Carolina that does a coal brand. And we have now had one made of that crown symbol. So we're switching to the coal brand or freeze brand, whatever you call it, with our crown logo from this point forward.
Nice. So everything will tie together, full circle.
Yeah,
then.
it'll be cool. We're excited about it.
Yeah. Well, I know that you have a big family too. So tell me a little bit about how your kids are involved in the operation.
We just have one daughter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'll mark that to edit.
We have a huge family. I mean, I have 52 cousins. And Lacy has a bazillion of them as well.
His mom lives here.
Right. My mom lives on the property with us. So we have a big extended family. But just one 17-year-old daughter, and that's plenty. And every day that we're doing something, or if I'm working the pens, everybody comes down and help. My mom's probably been run over 5 times by Longhorns because she always seems to be in the wrong place, but she never stops wanting to be there. And we have some hands that help us that are amazing, and we're real thankful for at both of our properties. So we're real lucky in that regards to have a lot of help.
So what does your daughter think of having Longhorns? Was she excited with your first few, and has she gotten involved at all?
She likes the calves.
Yeah. And then she homeschools. So one of her classes or one of her electives is helping around here.
Nice.
But she's 17. She really couldn't care less for the most part about much of anything that we do, but she does help with everything.
Correct.
We're very lucky.
Love what you're hearing? Be sure to check out our Pickup Truck Confessions.
It's a video series where we hop in the truck or rental car and interview a variety of breeders about what drives their passion for their livestock, how they got started in the breed of their choice, marketing tips, and more.
And now, back to the podcast.
So we've talked a lot about how you got started and who's involved and who's helped you. Let's talk a little bit about the future of your program. Where do you see it in the next year, the next 5 years?
You know, I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. We're kind of like fly by the seat of our pants type people. We started off with 50 acres here in Paradise, and now we're up to over 500 between purchase and lease land because you just keep having to feed these things. So I don't know. My goal is to get 1,000 acres in one that's all together, which is very difficult to do these days. And be able to have a more synchronized operation instead of multiple pastures. But we'll just see. I mean, we don't really have a goal. We didn't get involved in this in any way for the money side of it. If money were to come in, that's great. It's more just because we like looking at the animals and we enjoy it, although it's stressful at times. So we're lucky in that regards that we don't need to make a profit each year or sell enough stuff to be able to keep it going. Obviously very fortunate and thankful that that's how it is. So we don't really have like this ultimate plan of growing so many and selling so many to sustain. I just don't want to get overrun because last year's drought was painful for everybody, and we were part of that pain. And I don't want that to happen again. I'm sure a lot of people are saying the same thing. So the biggest thing is getting enough land to be able to be self-sufficient in feeding the animals without having to haul in a lot of food.
Does a little part of you kind of hope or dream that maybe 5 years from now we'll be looking at a really nice bull in the industry with the type of horns that you like and crown in his name that maybe came from your breeding?
Yeah, it'd be cool. We have a lot of people already asking about Roman Crown because, again, he's 34 months. He just hit 90 inches, so he'll probably be 92 or so at 3 years old. And for what I'm told and what I've studied, that's pretty incredible. So the 600-inch bulls on Arrowhead, all of them were right there, either an inch ahead of him, but most of them weren't even this big at his age. So there's a really good chance, especially the way it's run, that we might get to be one of the top 10 100-inch bulls, and that would be awesome. Yeah. we'd be very proud of that. But if it didn't happen, it's not the end of the world. But it would be neat, for sure. It'd be neat.
Well, we'll be keeping track of it, cheering you on.
Yeah, again, going back to Mark, he's really smart when it comes to marketing and telling people. And Tom Buxton's helped me as well. So we just started a marketing campaign. So I think the Trails magazine should be coming out here any day, and he's got a full page ad in it, and he'll have an ad every month for the next year with his new measurements, so people can follow along on his growth to see if he isn't one of the next 100 inchers.
Nice. Well, we'll be sure to look for that too then.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So I have to admit that when we do these podcast interviews and there's a husband-wife on together, I really like it because I just think it gets both different points of views and, it's a shared passion. But I also always have to ask, do you have any stories from working cattle together or bidding against each other at sales or anything like that you can share with us?
We haven't bid against each other at sales, thank goodness.
Well,
although my cousin and I have
that
a machinery sale.
I do have that one. I do have one story. One time at an auction, there was a cow that came up, and I thought they were at $3,500.
Oh yeah, this Legacy, not this year, the year before.
And so I bid. They were actually at $35,000. And
I'm going to her. Hey, we're still very new. It's our second auction. I still don't understand why these things are going for so much money. It doesn't make sense to me yet. So we made a deal that we wouldn't buy anything over $10,000, which to me is still a lot of money. And I knew that they were way up there, and she just liked this black and white. Again, not knowing what we're doing, just going off of color. There was a black and white. She wanted a black and white in the herd. So she's bidding on looking at her.
His cousin looked at me.
And she's not looking back at me. She's very serious and focused. My cousin was with us because his wife was out of town. And him and I are looking at each other like, what is going on? And then finally, she couldn't get, I forget what his name is, Jay. She couldn't get Jay's attention. So finally she gets his attention and he takes the bid. And I went, no, stop. And they stopped the auction.
Oh no.
For me to say, she thinks it's 3,500. And Jay starts laughing and the guy that does the bidding starts laughing. It's like, okay, where were we? Oh, I never sweat so bad.
They took it back, thank God. But it was, yeah.
That was humorous. So now we know.
I'm glad you can laugh at that. I mean, I feel like I don't know if you'd be laughing at it if the story had ended differently.
If they didn't take it back, it would be.
Yeah, well, we would have had an experience. That's
I
for
listen
sure.
very well now. I'm sure to pay attention.
But like everything else, we were on a plane ride not too long ago, and there was a gal that had a T-shirt on that said, "I'm sorry for what I said while we're working cattle."
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at that. I took a picture of her, asked her if it was okay, and sent it to Lacy. I was like, "Holy cow! I need this shirt," because when everything's going wrong, which happens unfortunately often, and they just aren't cooperating, it's so easy to get so frustrated. And then there's other days like yesterday, we had one cow at the complete opposite end of the pasture. Justin Savio was over to palpate to see what things are going. And I was like, all right, let's get all of our four-wheelers and motorcycles and flags and people. And we got to the other end of the field, and she ran all the way to the corrals and just put herself in a pen. It's like, that doesn't ever happen, ever. So you just never know what you're going to get on any given day. So it makes it interesting.
Well, I'm glad you all can laugh about it. That's the important thing.
Yeah. We don't plan on stopping anytime soon, that's for sure. So
let's talk a little bit about kind of the other things we were going to touch on, your hunting operation and your race cars. Which one of those do you want to talk about first?
We could talk about the hunting.
Okay.
So I started guiding hunts in like 1998. Been hunting my whole life. I grew up in Pennsylvania and Michigan, which hunting is a huge part of the populace that I was involved in, my grandfather, my father, all my uncles. And it just became a big part of my life. And then while I was in college, I worked at a hunting ranch called the Sanctuary in Michigan. And then when I graduated college, that's all I did is guided hunts for a few years throughout the country. And when I didn't have two nickels to rub together, I would trade hunt some of my services to be able to hunt myself, and started getting my collection of animals. And then when I met Lacy, her and Brinley decided they wanted to do some hunting. So we went to Africa and, several different countries and hunted all different things that I've always wanted to, but never really had a reason big enough to. And when Lacy was such a big supporter, she was like, well, let's try getting this and let's try getting that. We went to Africa. All my daughter wanted to get was a giraffe, which shocked me. That was the one thing that she would never want to get. So we've had a lot of fun experiences.
We hog hunt. We used to hog hunt here. Did my dad.
Yeah, we raised zebras in Cameron, Texas, and would hog hunt every weekend down there. So we've had a lot of fun and met a lot of great people. And it's neat. Like Tom Buxton, he owns a hunting operation. I think it's in Iredell that I went with. Is that right?
Iredell.
And amazing animals. And I met Chris Clark down in Corpus Christi, another unbelievably knowledgeable, educated Longhorn guy and a massive hunter, hunts all over the world. Every time I write him, it seems like he's in another country. So there's a lot of similarities in this cattle business and the hunting side of the world. They just seem to come together, which is neat.
It is. It's very cool. And for those folks listening that can't see your background, it's a very impressive trophy room for sure.
Yeah, we have a couple animals, a couple more than probably we need, but all great memories.
What was so on the first hunt that you two went on together, what was it for and where was it at?
I took her to West Texas for an aoudad hunt.
Alpine. Yep. Alpine, Texas, to his buddy's place in what you call Texas mountains, I guess.
It was beautiful out there.
Yeah, it's really pretty.
And her first animal she ever shot was at like
426 yards.
Yeah, under 450 yards, and was a one-shot, amazing deal. And then we had to hike to the top of the mountain to go get it.
Now, you said it was an aoudad, right?
Aoudad, yep.
Yeah. Don't they smell really bad? Right? Is that
they get musty.
Okay.
None of these animals ever really wash, so I don't say any of them smell like flowers.
I feel like I heard that about them once. So what's your favorite hunt that you've done together?
I know we've done so many.
I always liked hog hunting. Africa was fun. It was very memorable. Because we took his parents there and Brinley with us, our daughter.
Yeah, there's just a lot to see when we went there.
Correct.
But we've shot 10-foot alligators in Louisiana, which was really cool. And we've done so much stuff, it's hard to pick one.
Yeah.
What I like to tell people is my favorite hunt's my next one.
There you go. Well, when I was looking at your Instagram, I did see that you were in Iowa recently. So how do the hunts here compare to some of your world travels?
The hunts here in Texas?
Iowa.
No, in Iowa.
Oh,
where I'm at. Sorry.
That's all right. That region where you live, because of the quantities of food from all the farming and agriculture and just the weather as well, creates the biggest whitetails on the planet. And there isn't anybody that will disagree with me on that. That Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, maybe a little bit of Wisconsin, because of the cold, they have to get giant elk to sustain their warmth. And there's so many beans and corn. It's just incredible. So I've gone there every year for over 20 years, sometimes multiple times a year, and taken hundreds and hundreds of people because the animals are just so great. So 400-inch deer, I'm not sure if you're real familiar with how you score a whitetail deer, but a 400-inch deer is possible there, more frequent than it is to be able to grow something like that down here in a preserve type hunt. And then in a non-preserve hunt, and for those that don't know what that means, meaning a preserve hunt is a high fence. So the one that we go to in Iowa is multiple thousand acres. It's a wonderful place, but they have $7,000 or $8,000 of low fence or free range or cattle fence, we're going to call it. So basically, the animals are free to come and go as much as they can. They also have upper 200-inch deer every year that they shoot there. So it's also like an addiction. Every year you wonder if you can get a bigger one. That's pretty much the whole point behind of hunting, other than food, is can there be a bigger one? So Iowa just has that, and it's been a part of my life for so long. It always will be. And Lacy as well. And I'm taking Brindley for the first time this year, which I'm excited about. So we will always be in Southeast Iowa every fall until I can't do it anymore.
And what do you think of our weather? What's the coldest it's been while you're here?
So I hate your weather. Again, born in Michigan, raised in Pennsylvania, I'm used to it. So the coldest was I went on a hunt in January in the late muzzleloader season, and it was negative 34-degree wind chill, and I was muzzleloader hunting. And on like the 5th day, a deer finally came out, and I shot and missed.
Oh, no.
I had so much clothes on that I couldn't get the rifle into my shoulder to see. And I made a shot in the weirdest fashion. And for some reason, that deer didn't go anywhere. Maybe his eardrums were frozen. I don't know. All the schools were closed.
He probably just wanted out of his misery. If once it gets that far below zero, they just give up. Like everyone, I feel like.
But you, of any, well know if the schools are closed in Iowa due to temperature, it's cold,
right?
And for some dumb reason, I'm hunting in this with like 20-mile-an-hour winds, and I finally, when I did shoot the deer, I grabbed the barrel of the gun and my hand froze to it.
Oh, no.
And I got frostbite on the tips of 3 fingers, all just for a silly deer. I vowed to never do that again in my life. So, yeah, Iowa can be beautiful. It can be miserable.
For sure. Completely agree. No argument here.
Yeah, it's wild.
Well, tell me a little bit about the race cars.
Lacy started, we bought a drag race car because we were infatuated with the Street Outlaw show. We met one of the Street Outlaw guys, tried to help him, wound up not working out. He kind of took advantage of us. So we had this drag racing car that we didn't even know how to run. And we were convinced by a friend of ours, Ian Lane of Boostain Race Fuels, to get side-by-sides because it was much more economical. So Lacy was all about that idea. So we went and bought her one, and she found a racetrack nearby, and we entered in a race, and she did well. We had fun.
I was like the only female and all the men.
Yeah, she was one of 20 people, and she was the only woman, and did well. Didn't necessarily place high, but did well for her first race. And I watched that race and said, man, I think I could beat everybody.
So when I say we go 0 to 200, we have one car.
Yeah, so she had one race
then
car.
He comes home with, we end up with 1, then we end up with 5.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
That next Tuesday, we went back to the Power Force place, about 4 more, because there's different classes you can run in. And we sent them to a place to build them into race cars. And then the next race came. Mm-hmm. Lacy also did better, improving. I almost won my first race, but went a little too hard and flipped the race car.
Oh, wow.
Still landed on 4 wheels and almost won anyway. And then the car decided to stop working. And then it turned into kind of insanity where we bought a big semi that could hold all the vehicles, and we traveled all over the country. And there became a women's division. And Lacy won 2 different women's championships.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I won a couple of championships as well. And then
our daughter tried racing, but she kept running into concrete walls or flipping. And so he fired her. She says she retired. So there's a debate there.
Just like we talked about before, she did it because she wanted to be part of, what we did, but didn't really like it. No. So it was no problem. You don't need to do this if you certainly don't like it, for crying out loud.
Well, I feel like a lot of your stories have started with Lacy did this and Lacy wanted that. Maybe
Yeah, Lacy usually gets me. I didn't realize that until you just said that. You're right. Lacy starts
maybe your next
family
adventure.
reunion and I take it over.
There you go. Maybe your next adventure, you need to let your daughter pick, and she'll find her passion then.
God, I can only imagine what we'll be doing. Not a bad idea, but might be wild.
Well, what's your next Longhorn adventure going to be? This podcast will come out this summer. So, what are some of the events, maybe later this summer or fall, that you're going to go to or pay attention to online?
Well, what we're excited about is after going down to Randy Murray's place, he has so many animals that he obviously has to, for lack of a better word, discard, what he considers to be not prominent, right? Or not as good of a future as what he already has. So, to put it bluntly, I mentioned to him that the stuff that you throw away is probably better than the best stuff I have. So in the next couple months, we plan on taking a trailer down there and loading it full of his rejects that will probably be better than anything that we have to see, young yearlings or weanlings or something of that nature, and see how much it will enhance our program, still trying to stay kind of budget friendly compared to some of these big baller guys that are spending hundreds of thousands of cows. That's not anything that we intend to do anytime soon. So we're trying to keep it fun and budgetively sensible in our minds. And I feel like that's a good opportunity to do that. So I'm the most excited about that more than anything. And then just calves, all these cows that we bred this past winter, we can't wait to see what they produce in the fall.
I feel like that's sometimes the hardest part, is being patient and waiting for all those calves to hit the ground and see what you get.
Yeah, and if there's one thing you got from this conversation, it's that I like going full bore, and there's no such thing as going full bore and having babies. You have to wait. And same thing with horns. You can't just make them get big now so we can see what they're going to be. So this is teaching me some patience that I don't necessarily have a lot of.
Is it working, Lacy?
Probably not. That's why we keep buying more.
There you go. Well, before we sign off here, is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you want to share with the listeners about your program or any of your other businesses?
Not really about our businesses. Business is business. It's kind of the part of life that you have to do to keep having fun. But on the program side, if there's one thing I could recommend, if any of these longtime breeders, and I've had many talks with Mark about this, are listening to this, is, in my personal opinion, if you see somebody you don't recognize, you should say hi and talk about your program to them, because I promise you they will be eager to listen. The only thing that we have had negative about this whole experience is, we'll use the legacy last year, not this past one, is when we walked in there wasn't quite enough seating. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know anybody. And we almost kind of felt silly. And we went up to a couple people that we had known their names, because Lacy's not afraid to talk to anybody. It's one of her amazing qualities. I'm usually a little bit more hesitant. And we've gained some good friendships there. But there really is, out of all the things that we've done in our lives, including racing, hunting, all these different things, all our businesses, the way to get the most new users is to interact with them and make them feel welcome. And I feel like some of these bigger names, maybe, and this is an opinion, maybe feel that they're a big name and they don't need to talk to anybody, but everybody wants cows to get sold. And the best way to do that is say, hi, I'm Bob and I sell cattle, and you might want to look at mine. What's your name? Where are you from? I think that would really help the industry on, going back and forth on being able to make the sales that they want. But the only people that we have met, to be completely honest with you, are ones that we've gone up to. there has not been one person that has come up and introduced themselves to us. So, and I'm not knocking people. Most everybody knows everybody because this has been a big, long standing organization. But that would be my opinion, or if I could give a suggestion to everybody, is say hi to somebody that you haven't met. There is a chance that you could sell half your herd to them. I mean, look at Mark. Mark was the only person. Yes, we did make our first introduction, but because he stayed going he sold 40 head of cattle to us. And he's thankful for that because he's a smart guy. So I hope to goodness that we meet a whole lot more people for multiple reasons, not just to be able to, learn their herd, but to build more relationships and help expand the industry.
Well, and I feel like within the Longhorn industry, some of those bigger breeders, like you mentioned, or the more experienced ones, they're the nicest people in the world, and they are so knowledgeable and have so much to share. It's just like you said, it's that initial kind of awkwardness of having to network or, introduce yourselves and stuff. But, I feel like once that happens, it is, like you said, it just kind of opens the floodgates on the knowledge that you can learn and the stories that you can hear and the connections that you can make. So hopefully some of them are listening, and the next sale you're at, you get a lot of hellos and handshakes.
but not just us, and please don't take that as me complaining about us. I'm talking about for the industry in general. Like at the last, let's say, legacy sale, there's so many faces that every hand or eye that looked at it, I said hello and introduced myself, and who knows where that could lead to. And everybody wants to talk about their cows because everybody's proud. And that's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool that everybody's proud. And maybe there's some you just don't want to listen to. Let's be honest. But there could be something that you can't wait to see. You know what I mean? That's amazing. At the end of the legacy, Vincent Rapp came up to us, who's an amazingly hilarious, great guy. And he introduced us to a friend that has a cow that just blew me away on its base. Remember, we like base. And if Vincent wasn't so boisterous and such a good guy, and if we hadn't have met him, we would have never met that gentleman. You know what I mean? So the more people introduce and stick your hand out, I think the bigger this industry could come. And because one of the big things I'm hearing, like right now, the market is soft, is what people keep saying. Well, if there was 500 more people in the room, probably wouldn't be as soft. That's just a guess on my part.
No, yeah, I think that's great advice and great feedback for sure.
But we're excited to meet a bunch of people and see what comes up in the future. Big time.
Well, thank you both so much for being on the podcast today, and we'll link your website, some of your animals, as well as all the other breeders that you mentioned in the show notes, so folks can go check those out as well.
Wonderful. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.